Imagine this. A man stands on the banks of the Tigris River. The sun is sinking low, the air is still, and he has been fasting for 3 long weeks. No meat, no wine, no rich food. His body is weak, but his spirit is burning with a desperate hunger for understanding. Suddenly, the sky seems to tear open. A radiant being appears before him, clothed in linen, with a belt of pure gold around his waist. His face flashes like lightning. His eyes blaze like flaming torches. His arms and legs gleam like polished bronze, and his voice roars like the sound of a multitude. The men with him flee in terror, though they see nothing. He collapses to the ground, trembling, unable to speak. And then the being speaks words that shake the unseen realm. The prince of the kingdom of Persia resisted me 21 days. What does that even mean? How can a spiritual being, called the Prince of Persia, resist a heavenly messenger sent by God? Why Persia? Why a nation? Why a territory? And here's the question that brings this ancient moment into our modern world. If the Prince of Persia was active in Daniel's day, what makes us think he's not active now? Today, we're diving deep into the unseen realm behind the title. The Prince of Persia, the ancient spirit still fueling today's Middle East wars. And if you stay with me until the end, you will see Scripture come alive in a way that reframes the Middle East, reframes spiritual warfare, and reframes your own prayer life. To understand Daniel 10, we must go back to the moment God divided the nations. Deuteronomy 32, 8-9. In the ESV says, "When the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. But the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob, his allotted heritage." This is the Bible's explanation for the unseen realm. At Babel, God disinherited the nations. He assigned them to lesser spiritual beings, sons of God or Bene Elohim, while keeping Israel as his own. This is cosmic geography. Territories, boundaries, nations under spiritual rulers. The Hebrew phrase Bene Elohim refers to divine beings in God's heavenly court. Not humans, not idols, not metaphors, real spiritual entities. Psalm 82 confirms this when God stands in the divine council and rebukes these beings for ruling unjustly. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? These beings were supposed to govern the nations under God's authority. Instead, they led them into darkness. This is why the world is the way it is. This is why nations rage. This is why empires rise and fall. And this is why Daniel 10 matters. Because Daniel 10 is the moment the curtain is pulled back and we see one of these territorial beings resisting God's purposes. Let's lay out the theological foundation. First, the Bible teaches a populated, unseen realm. Job 1-2 shows heavenly beings presenting themselves before God. 1 Kings 22 shows a divine council deliberating. Psalm 89 describes God's assembly. The Bible is supernatural from beginning to end. Second, nations are under spiritual rulers. Deuteronomy 32 says, God assigned the nations to the sons of God. Daniel 10 shows these beings influencing earthly empires. Revelation 12 shows the dragon deceiving the nations. This is not myth. This is Scripture. Third, these beings can resist God's messengers. Daniel 10:13 says the Prince of Persia resisted the heavenly messenger for 21 days. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. This means spiritual warfare is not just personal, it is geopolitical. Fourth, Israel is God's portion. While the nations were assigned to lesser beings, Israel was God's own inheritance. This is why Israel's story is the center of Scripture. This is why the Messiah comes through Israel. This is why the nation's rulers oppose Israel. And fifth, Jesus came to reclaim the nations. At the resurrection, Jesus declares, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me." He is reclaiming what was lost at Babel. Pentecost reverses Babel as the nations hear the gospel in their own languages. Revelation ends with all nations worshipping the Lamb. This is the story we're in. Now we step into Daniel 10. Daniel 10, 4-6 in the NIV says, "On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, the Tigris, I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude." This is not a normal angel. This is a throne room being. Daniel continues, "I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision. Those who were with me did not see it, but such terror overwhelmed them that they fled and hid themselves." This is the pattern of theophany. Humans collapse in the presence of the holy. Then the being speaks, "Do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them." But then comes the shock. "But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me." Let's break this down. Prince of the Persian kingdom in Hebrew is Sar Paras. Sar means ruler, commander, chief. This is not a human prince. No human can restrain a heavenly being. This is a territorial, spiritual power assigned to Persia. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Empires have spiritual shadows. "Resisted me 21 days" uses the Hebrew word amad, meaning to stand against, to oppose, to block. This was not a delay, it was a confrontation. Your prayers are heard instantly, but the answers may be contested in the unseen realm. Michael, one of the chief princes, is consistently associated with Israel. Daniel 10:21 calls him your prince. Daniel 12:1 calls him the great prince who protects Israel. This means Persia has a spiritual prince. Israel has a spiritual prince. These beings contend. Their conflict shapes history. When the messenger says, "I was detained there with the king of Persia," the word king parallels prince. This is not Cyrus. This is a spiritual ruler. The Bible teaches layered authority, earthly kings and spiritual kings. Now, let's connect Daniel 10 to the rest of Scripture. Persia is not random. Persia is the empire that ends Israel's exile, allows the rebuilding of the temple, and sets the stage for the Messiah's lineage to continue. So why would the Prince of Persia resist God's messenger? Because spiritual powers resist anything that advances God's plan. And Persia is modern-day Iran. Iran is a major geopolitical force, a center of regional conflict, a driver of proxy wars, and a sworn enemy of Israel. Is this coincidence or continuity? The Bible doesn't say the Prince of Persia disappears, it simply reveals his existence. Psalm 82 shows God judging the spiritual rulers of the nations. You are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men, you shall die. This is not poetry, it is a death sentence on rebellious spiritual beings. Jesus' resurrection is the moment these rulers lose their legal authority. Ephesians 6:12 says, "Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness." The Greek terms archai, exousiai, kosmokratoris refer to structured, territorial spiritual powers. Paul is describing the same reality Daniel saw. Revelation 12 shows the dragon sweeping a third of the stars, heavenly beings, and waging war on the nations. Revelation 20 shows the final judgment of these powers. The Bible's story is consistent. Nations have spiritual rulers. These rulers rebel. They influence history. Christ defeats them, and the nations are reclaimed. Let's address objections. Some say, isn't this symbolic? No. Daniel 10 is narrative, not apocalyptic poetry. The language is literal. The conflict is described as actual resistance. Others say, why would God allow spiritual beings to influence nations? Because God honors the structure he created. He assigned the nations to these beings at Babel. Their rebellion is the reason for the world's chaos. Christ's mission is to reclaim the nations. And some say, isn't this dangerous speculation? Not if we stay anchored in Scripture. We are not naming demons. We are not assigning spirits to modern nations. We are simply acknowledging what the Bible reveals. Territorial spiritual powers exist and influence history. So what does this mean for us? Prayer is geopolitical. When you pray for Israel, when you pray for peace in the Middle East, when you pray for the gospel to spread, you are stepping into a cosmic conflict. The Middle East is not just political, it is spiritual. Behind every headline, behind every conflict, behind every alliance, there are unseen powers at work. This does not remove human responsibility. It reveals the deeper layers of reality. Christ is supreme over every power. Colossians 2:15 says, "He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in him." Jesus is not intimidated by the Prince of Persia. He is not threatened by territorial powers. He is Lord over all. And you are part of the reclamation of the nations. Every prayer, every act of obedience, every moment of faith pushes back the darkness. Let's recap the biggest insights. The unseen realm is real and populated. Nations were assigned to spiritual rulers at Babel. The Prince of Persia is one of these rulers. 10 reveals real conflict in the unseen realm. These powers still influence nations today. And Christ is reclaiming the nations, and you are part of that mission. If this opened your eyes, stay with this channel. Our next exploration will take us into another ancient power, the Prince of Greece, the spirit behind Western civilization's spiritual crisis, because the story isn't over, and the unseen realm is more real than we imagine.